Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Galactic Council chambers. The massive room held representatives from 47 different alien species. Each delegate sat in specially designed seats that matched their unique biology. The Zephyrians glowed softly blue in their crystal chairs. The Corvani perched on metal platforms that supported their insect-like bodies. The Drakmari lounged in pools of heated water. For 300 years, humans had been the peacekeepers of this galaxy. They stopped wars before they started. They delivered food to starving worlds. They protected trade routes from pirates and hostile forces. When the deadly Vrak Empire threatened from the Outer Rim, human fleets stood as the first line of defense. But today everything would change. Morrison cleared his throat. The room fell silent. Even the constant chittering of the Altarian delegates stopped. All eyes turned to the human admiral in his simple blue uniform. The Terran Federation formally withdraws from all galactic affairs, Morrison announced. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation systems. All human military forces, trade vessels, and diplomatic missions will return to Sol space immediately. The silence lasted only a few seconds before chaos erupted. Ambassador Kethver of the Zephyrians shot up from his seat. His crystalline body pulsed with agitated orange light. Admiral Morrison, this must be some kind of negotiation tactic. The recent disagreements about trade policies can surely be worked out through proper diplomatic channels. Morrison shook his head slowly. This is not about trade policies, Ambassador Kethver. For the past 80 months, you have questioned every decision we make. You have criticized our methods of keeping peace. You have accused us of being imperialists who want to control the galaxy. The Corvani delegate Jektar clicked his mandibles angrily. We simply wanted more voice in decisions that affect our worlds. Humans cannot make choices for everyone without consulting us first. Last month, Morrison continued, his voice growing harder, the Corvani delegation called us warmongers who pretend to be peacekeepers. The Altarian Republic published a formal statement saying the galaxy would be much better off without human interference. The Drakmari Senate voted to limit human military presence in their sector by 70%. Morrison looked around the chamber at faces that showed confusion, anger, and growing concern. These were species he had worked with for decades. He had saved some of their worlds personally. He had attended their cultural celebrations and mourned their losses. You have made your feelings very clear, Morrison said. You want us gone? You believe you can handle galactic affairs without human involvement. Very well, you will get exactly what you have asked for. The Altarian Prime Speaker Velanara raised her forearms in a gesture of peace. Admiral Morrison, perhaps we have been too hasty in our criticism. The human contribution to galactic stability has always been valued, even if we sometimes disagreed with specific methods. Too late for that now, Morrison replied. For 3 centuries, humans have bled and died protecting worlds that are not our own. We have spent trillions of credits maintaining peace in regions where we have no economic interests. We have mediated thousands of disputes between species who could not find common ground. He paused and looked directly at each delegation in turn. And in return, we have been called tyrants, warmongers, and imperialists. We have been accused of having secret agendas and hidden motives. Every time we try to prevent a war, someone claims we are interfering with their sovereignty. Every time we provide aid during disasters, someone suggests we are trying to create dependencies. From the observation deck above the main chamber, Captain Lisa Hayes watched the proceedings with a heavy heart. She had served on dozens of alien worlds during her 20-year career. She had friends among many of the species represented below. But she also understood why this moment had finally come. Her aide, Lieutenant Paul Carter, approached with a datapad. Ma'am, the evacuation fleets are ready to depart on your signal. All human personnel have been withdrawn from the outer colonies. Civilian populations in mixed settlements have been given the choice to return to human space or remain with local governments. Hayes nodded. How many chose to stay? Less than 5%, Carter replied. Most of them are married to locals, or have businesses they cannot easily relocate. And our alien allies? Carter hesitated. The few species that spoke in our favor have been offered embassy positions in soul space. But most of their governments seem to think this withdrawal is temporary. They believe humans will return once emotions cool down. Hayes looked back at the chaos in the chamber below. Representatives were shouting at each other in dozens of different languages. Some were trying to reach Morrison directly. Others were frantically contacting their home governments. They still do not understand, Hayes said quietly. They think this is about hurt feelings or wounded pride. Down in the chamber, Morrison raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. The decision has been made, he announced. As of this moment, all human defensive agreements are void. All trade partnerships are canceled. All humanitarian aid programs are terminated. All scientific cooperation projects are suspended. The Drakmari ambassador, Admiral Zextai, stood up in his water tank. Morrison, you cannot simply abandon your responsibilities. There are active conflicts in 17 sectors that require human mediation. The Kepler mining dispute between the Corvani and Altarians is on the verge of becoming a shooting war. Then I suggest you find other ways to resolve your differences, Morrison replied. You have repeatedly stated that human mediation is unwelcome interference. But Admiral, Kethver pleaded, what about the Vrak Empire? They have been testing our defenses along the neutral zone. Only human military strength has kept them from launching a full invasion. Morrison's expression hardened. Ambassador Kethver, just last week your government filed a formal complaint about human military exercises near Vrak space. You claimed we were being unnecessarily provocative and risking galactic peace. You demanded that we reduce our presence in that region immediately. The Zephyrian ambassador's glow dimmed with embarrassment. We were concerned about escalating tensions, but surely you understand that we still need protection from external threats. You cannot have it both ways, Morrison said firmly. You cannot demand that we leave you alone and simultaneously expect us to protect you. You cannot call us imperialists and then ask us to maintain your security. You wanted independence from human oversight. Independence means taking responsibility for your own defense. As Morrison spoke these words, the full weight of what was happening began to sink in throughout the chamber. For 3 centuries, human presence had been so constant and reliable that most species took it completely for granted. They never considered what the galaxy would look like without human peacekeepers, human traders, human engineers, and human protectors. Morrison gathered his papers and prepared to leave. The withdrawal will be completed within 72 hours. We wish you well in your future endeavors. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, the remaining aliens sat in stunned silence. They had gotten exactly what they asked for. Now they would learn what that really meant. 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace. Commander Helen Price sat in her office aboard the USS Defiance, now patrolling the outer edges of the Sol system. Reports flooded across her desk from intelligence. Networks that humans had quietly maintained. Throughout the galaxy for centuries, the news was not good. Chief Intelligence Officer Danny Walsh knocked on her door and entered with a thick stack of data pads. His face showed the strain of processing increasingly desperate communications from across the galaxy. The situation is getting worse every day, Walsh reported. The Corvani and Altarians have moved from trade disputes to actual shooting. 3. Corvani mining stations were destroyed last week by Altarian combat ships. The Altarians claimed the attacks were in self-defense after Corvani forces seized 2 of their cargo vessels. Price rubbed her temples. The headaches have become constant since the withdrawal began. What about mediation efforts? The Zephyrians tried to organize peace talks, but neither side trusts them to be neutral. The Corvani think the Zephyrians favor the Altarians because of their crystal technology trade agreements. The Altarians believe the Zephyrians are secretly supplying the Corvani with advanced weapons. Walsh set down another data pad. The Zephyrian Trade Confederation is also requesting emergency economic assistance. It turns out that 80% of their interstellar commerce was processed through human banking systems. Without access to human financial networks, their economy is collapsing. And the Drakmari? They are having their own problems. 17. Different terrorist groups have become active in their sector since our counterintelligence teams withdrew. The Drakmari security forces are completely overwhelmed. Price picked up the next report. What about the Outer Rim? Walsh's expression grew even more serious. Vrak Empire fleet movements have increased by 300%. Our deep space monitoring stations show massive military buildups along the neutral zone. They are definitely preparing for something big. What the alien species had failed to understand was how dependent they had become on human infrastructure over 3 centuries. When humans first arrived in the galaxy, each species had their own separate communication systems, trade networks, and defense arrangements, but human technology was simply better. Human methods were more efficient. Human systems were more reliable, gradually. Without anyone really noticing, human-designed communication relays had become the backbone of galaxy-wide information exchange. Human logistics networks fed billions of people across hundreds of worlds. Human banking systems processed the vast majority of interstellar commerce. Human peacekeeping forces had prevented countless small disputes from growing into major wars. Most importantly, human intelligence networks had kept all the different species informed about threats they never even knew existed on the planet Zarian. Governor Kent Lawson was learning this lesson the hard way. Agent Julie Martin had tried to brief him during the final human withdrawal, but he had been too proud to listen carefully. Sir, there are 17 active terrorist cells operating in this sector, Martin had explained. Our teams have been conducting surveillance and disruption operations for the past 8 years. Without our presence, these groups will likely resume their activities within weeks. Governor Lawson had waved dismissively. Agent Martin, I appreciate your concern, but Zarian has maintained its own security forces for over 2 centuries. We are perfectly capable of handling domestic threats without human supervision. 3 weeks later, the Zarian capital city was burning. Coordinated attacks had struck government buildings, power stations, and transportation hubs simultaneously. The terrorist cells that human agents had been quietly suppressing for years had emerged stronger and better organized than anyone expected. Governor Lawson huddled in his emergency bunker as explosions shook the building above. His security chief, Colonel Hayes, brought the latest damage reports. Sir, we have lost contact with 4 provincial capitals. The attacks appear to be coordinated across the entire planet. Our intelligence services had no advance warning of this level of organization among the rebel groups. Lawson stared at the tactical displays showing red warning indicators across his world. How did we miss all of this? Sir, it appears that human intelligence operations were much more extensive than we realized. They had infiltrated groups that we did not even know existed. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The Galactic Council tried to convene emergency sessions to address the growing crisis, but without human translators and mediation specialists, the meetings quickly devolved into chaos. The Zephyrians accused the Altarians of deliberately manipulating currency exchange rates to damage their economy. The Corvani blamed the Drakmari for secretly supporting Altarian mining operations in disputed territories. The Altarians insisted that Zephyrian trade policies were discriminatory against their shipping companies, ancient grudges that had been kept under control by skilled human diplomats began to resurface. Species that had worked together peacefully for decades suddenly found reasons to distrust each other. Without neutral human mediators to find common ground, every disagreement became a potential conflict. President Claire Thompson watched the reports from her office. In New Geneva on Earth, the daily intelligence briefings painted a picture of a galaxy rapidly descending into chaos. Secretary of State Greg Collins entered with the latest diplomatic communications. Madam President, we are receiving over 100 requests for assistance every day. The Zephyrians want us to mediate their trade dispute with the Altarians. The Drakmari are asking for help with their terrorism problem. Even the Corvani have sent unofficial messages asking us to reconsider our withdrawal. Thompson looked out the window at the peaceful Earth landscape. Are any of them willing to apologize for their previous accusations? Are any of them ready to admit that human involvement was actually beneficial? Collins shook his head. Most of them are still maintaining that our withdrawal is temporary. They seem to believe that we are simply making a point and will return once they make some minor concessions. They still do not understand, Thompson said. This was never about getting better treatment or more respect. This was about them learning to stand on their own. Madam President, the intelligence report suggests that some regions may experience complete governmental collapse within months. The refugee crisis alone could affect millions of innocent civilians. Thompson was quiet for a long moment. The decision to withdraw had not been made lightly. Every human leader understood the potential consequences. But they also understood that continuing to enable dependency would ultimately be more harmful than allowing short-term suffering. Greg, for 300 years we have solved their problems for them. Every time they faced a crisis, humans stepped in with solutions. Every time they had disputes, we provided mediation. Every time they were threatened, we offered protection. She turned back to face Collins. But what did they learn from all of this? They learned that they did not need to develop their own conflict resolution skills because humans would handle it. They learned that they did not need to build robust defense systems because humans would protect them. They learned that they did not need to create stable economic partnerships because humans would manage their trade. Collins nodded slowly. So you believe that withdrawal will force them to develop these capabilities themselves? I hope it will. Thompson replied, but even if it does not, we cannot continue to be responsible for species that do not want our help. They made their choice very clear. Now they must live with the consequences. As the months passed, the galaxy that had rejected human guidance was discovering the true cost of independence. The attack came without any warning signals or diplomatic messages. Vrak battle fleets numbering in the thousands swept across the galaxy's outer rim like a dark storm cloud. Their massive warships moved in perfect formation, destroying everything in their path. World after world fell to their brutal assault as alien species that had spent decades building peaceful civilizations watched helplessly while everything burned around them. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the Sol Defense Fleet headquarters, watching tactical displays that showed the scope of the Vrak invasion. The screens were filled with red indicators marking fallen worlds and refugee streams, fleeing toward the galaxy's center. Captain Steve Parker approached with the latest intelligence reports. His face was grim as he handed Morrison the datapad. Sir, the Altarian home fleet was completely destroyed in less than 6 hours. They managed to evacuate maybe 10% of their population before the orbital bombardment began. Morrison felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. He had fought the Vrak Empire for 30 years before the withdrawal. He knew exactly what their victory meant for the civilian populations on conquered worlds. What about the Corvani? They lasted 8 hours longer than the Altarians, but the result was the same. The Corvani government is requesting immediate military assistance. They are offering to restore all previous trade agreements and give humans full authority over their defense policies. Denied, Morrison replied. Though the word felt like poison in his mouth, Lieutenant Linda Hayes burst into the command center with an urgent communication. Sir, the Drakmari ambassador is on priority channel 1. He says their entire outer defense line has collapsed. They are begging for emergency military intervention. Morrison looked at the communication panel for a long moment. Ambassador Zextai had been a personal friend for over a decade. They had worked together on countless peacekeeping missions. Morrison had attended the naming ceremony for Zextai's eldest daughter, also denied. The irony was not lost on Morrison or anyone else in the human military command structure. For 3 centuries, humanity had protected these species from the Vrak Empire, often at enormous cost in human lives and resources. Human soldiers had died defending alien worlds that most humans had never even visited. Human families had mourned sons and daughters, who gave their lives protecting civilizations that ultimately decided. Human presence was unwelcome. The Vrak Empire had been building their strength for decades, waiting for exactly this opportunity. Their war chief, Frakson, was a brilliant strategist who understood that humans were the only military force in the galaxy capable of matching Vrak combat effectiveness. With humans gone, the other species were like sheep waiting for wolves on Earth. President Claire Thompson faced the most difficult decision of her presidency. The Global Assembly was meeting in emergency session as reports of Vrak atrocities flooded the news networks. Protests had begun in major cities as humans demanded military intervention to stop the genocide occurring across the galaxy. General Patricia Stone burst into the presidential conference room without waiting for permission. Her uniform was wrinkled and her eyes showed the strain of sleepless nights spent watching alien worlds burn. Madam President, we have to act now. Our stealth attack fleets are positioned and ready. We could cripple the main Vrak offensive within 72 hours if you give the authorization. Thompson looked at the tactical displays showing Vrak fleet positions. Human military planners had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. Operation Silent Guardian had been developed as a contingency plan that could neutralize the Vrak threat in a matter of weeks. General Stone, what did the Corvani delegation say about human military exercises near Vrak space just 2 months ago? Stone's jaw tightened. They said we were being unnecessarily aggressive and risking galactic peace through our provocative actions. And what did the Altarian Republic publish in their official statement last year? They said that human military presence in their region was an unwelcome reminder of our imperialist tendencies. Thompson nodded. And what did the Drakmari Senate vote to do regarding our defensive positions in their sector? They voted to expel all human military forces and establish their own defense networks. General, for 300 years we protected them from threats they refused to acknowledge. We maintained defensive positions in regions where we had no economic interests. We spent trillions of credits and thousands of human lives keeping the Vrak Empire contained. Thompson stood and walked to the window overlooking the peaceful Earth landscape. And what did we get in return? We were called warmongers and imperialists. We were accused of having hidden agendas and secret plans for galactic domination. Every defensive position we maintained was described as an occupation force. Every training exercise was called a provocation. But Madam President, innocent people are dying right now. Children are being killed by Vrak soldiers who do not distinguish between combatants and civilians. Thompson felt tears forming in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. General, do you think I do not care about those children? Do you think any of us wanted this to happen? She turned back to face Stone. But we cannot save people who do not want to be saved. We cannot protect civilizations that reject our protection. The alien species made their choice very clear when they demanded our withdrawal. They were wrong, Stone said desperately. They made a terrible mistake, but that does not mean we should let them all die for it. General, if we intervene now, what lesson do they learn? They learn that humans will always come to rescue them no matter how badly they treat us. They learn that they can reject our help when times are good and demand our assistance when times are bad. They learn that their actions have no real consequences because humans will never truly abandon them. Thompson sat back down and looked at the reports of Vrak advances across multiple sectors. If we save them now, in 50 years they will be complaining about human interference again. They will be demanding that we reduce our military presence and stop meddling in their affairs. And when the next crisis comes, we will have the exact same argument. The alien species had tried every desperate measure they could think of to change human minds. Economic incentives that offered humans favorable trade deals for the next century. Territorial concessions that would give humans permanent bases in strategic locations. Political offers that would make humans permanent leaders of a reformed Galactic Council with expanded powers. All offers were politely declined. What the aliens did not know was that humanity was watching everything through intelligence. Networks that had been built over centuries and could not be detected or disabled by alien technology. Human analysts predicted every VRAC strategy with perfect accuracy. Human deep space monitoring stations tracked every enemy fleet movement in real time. They could have ended the war at any time with minimal human casualties, but they chose not to act. The galaxy that had rejected human protection was learning the true price of independence through fire and blood. And humanity, despite every instinct to help, was allowing the lesson to continue until it was fully learned. The Galactic Council's emergency session was held in an underground bunker on Proxima Station, one of the few central worlds still free from VRAC occupation. The massive chamber that had once hosted grand diplomatic ceremonies now looked like a wartime command center. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the faces of desperate alien delegates. Ambassador Kethver of the Zephyrians looked terrible. His normally bright crystalline features had dimmed to a dull gray color. Dark cracks ran through his transparent skin, showing the stress of watching his civilization crumble under VRAC assault. "We must set aside our pride," he told the remaining delegates. His voice carried none of its former confidence. "We need the humans to return. Without their military support, we will all be extinct within a year." The Kovani representative Shektar clicked his mandibles angrily. "They abandoned us when we needed them most. Why would they care about our survival now? They have shown their true nature by leaving us to die." Admiral Zextai of the Drakmari fleet raised himself partially out of his portable water tank. "Because they are human," he replied with certainty. "Despite everything that has happened, they cannot stand to watch genocide occur. It goes against their basic nature." But Zextai was wrong about human nature. When the desperate alien ambassadors finally arrived at the edge of soul space, they found human border stations that politely but firmly denied them entry. The massive defensive platforms that protected the human home systems remained closed to all outside visitors. Admiral Jack Kelly commanded the sole perimeter defense from his flagship positioned at the system's outer boundary. He received the alien delegation's desperate pleas through quantum communication links, maintaining professional courtesy despite the emotional weight of their messages. "I am very sorry," Kelly told the assembled ambassadors via secure channel. "The Terran Federation is not currently accepting diplomatic missions from former Galactic Council members. All communication requests must be submitted through proper channels and will be reviewed according to established protocols." Ambassador Kethver's image flickered on the communication screen. His crystalline body pulsed with desperate orange light. "Admiral Kelly, please listen to us. Billions of people are dying every day. Our children and elderly populations are being systematically murdered by VRAC occupation forces. They do not take prisoners or allow evacuations." Kelly felt his chest tighten, but his expression remained neutral. "I understand your concern, Ambassador Kethver. Perhaps your species should have considered these possibilities before voting to remove human peacekeeping forces from your territories." "We made a mistake," Kethver admitted. "We were wrong about human intentions. We let fear and pride cloud our judgment." "But surely you cannot let entire civilizations be destroyed because of our political errors." "Admiral Kelly," interrupted the Altarian delegate, "we are prepared to offer complete restoration of all previous agreements. Humans can have full authority over our military forces and defense policies. We will pay any price you name for immediate assistance." Kelly looked at the faces of beings who had once called humans warmongers and imperialists. The price was 300 years of faithful service, millions of human lives lost protecting your worlds, and basic respect for our efforts. That price has already been paid, and the account was closed when you demanded our withdrawal. Behind the scenes, the debate within human leadership had become increasingly intense. General Patricia Stone met with President Thompson every day, presenting new intelligence about VRAC atrocities and arguing for immediate intervention. "Madam President, our deep strike fleets could end this war in less than 2 weeks," Stone insisted during their morning briefing. "The VRAC Empire has never faced our latest stealth technology. We could eliminate their command structure before they even knew we were there." Thompson studied the tactical plans that Stone had prepared. Operation Silent Guardian had been refined over decades of planning. It was elegant, efficient, and would save millions of alien lives. General, tell me again what the Corvani ambassador said about our military bases in his sector, Thompson requested. Stone's shoulders sagged. He called them illegal occupation forces and demanded their immediate removal. He said that human military presence was a violation of Corvani sovereignty. And what did the Zephyrian Trade Council publish about our defense spending? They said that human military expenditures were excessive and suggested that we were planning aggressive expansion rather than defensive operations. Thompson nodded. And what did the Altarian Republic's leading newspaper write about our peacekeeping missions? They wrote that human peacekeepers were actually advanced scouts for future colonization efforts, Stone admitted reluctantly. General Stone, we offered them protection for 3 centuries. We asked for nothing in return except basic cooperation and minimal respect. Instead, we were constantly accused of having secret agendas and evil intentions. Thompson stood and walked to her office window. Outside, children played in parks that had never known war. Earth cities thrived in peace that had been maintained by human sacrifices on distant worlds. Every defensive position we established was called an invasion. Every training exercise was described as a threat. Every offer of assistance was viewed with suspicion. They made it very clear that they did not trust us and did not want our help. But they were wrong about our intentions, Stone argued. We never wanted to control them or exploit their resources. We genuinely wanted to help them build better lives. Of course they were wrong, Thompson replied. But being wrong about us does not change the fact that they rejected our help. They demanded independence. True independence means taking responsibility for the consequences of your own choices. The alien species continued their desperate attempts to convince humans to intervene. They offered to make humans permanent rulers of the galaxy with unlimited authority. They promised to name human heroes in their history books forever. They even offered to relocate entire populations to serve as workers in human colonies. Every offer was declined with the same polite firmness. What the aliens could not understand was that humans had never wanted to rule them. Human culture valued independence and self-determination above almost everything else. The greatest gift humans could give to any species was the ability to stand on their own and make their own choices, but that gift came with a price. Independence meant accepting responsibility for bad choices as well as good ones. Dr. Sarah Kim, the president's chief advisor on alien affairs, brought the latest refugee reports to the weekly cabinet meeting. The displaced population has reached over 2 billion beings. Temporary camps have been established on 43 different worlds, but resources are running dangerously low. Are any of the surviving governments requesting humanitarian aid rather than military intervention? Thompson asked. A few have made such requests, but most still insist that only military action can solve the crisis. They want us to defeat the Vrak Empire for them rather than helping them defeat it themselves. Thompson sighed. Then they still have not learned the lesson. They still expect us to solve their problems instead of learning to solve problems themselves. The galaxy continued to burn while humanity watched and waited for true understanding to emerge from the ashes of failed civilizations. 2 years after the Vrak offensive began, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. Captain Tony Walsh commanded the observation post at the edge of soul space, monitoring the galactic situation through networks that aliens still did not know existed. The reports crossing his desk told a story that even human strategists had not fully predicted. The combined alien fleets have begun pushing back Vrak forces in 7 different sectors, he reported to Admiral Morrison during their daily briefing. They have formed a military alliance that includes species who have been enemies for centuries. Morrison looked up from his tactical displays with genuine surprise. The Corvani and Altarians are working together? Not just working together, sir. They have merged their fleet commands under a single operational structure. The Corvani are providing heavy assault ships while the Altarians contribute their advanced sensor technology. The combination is proving very effective against Vrak. Tactics, Morrison nodded slowly. Throughout human history, necessity had always been the greatest teacher. When survival was at stake, even the most stubborn species could learn to cooperate. What about the others? The Zephyrians have developed new communication encryption that the Vrak cannot break. The Drakmari have created underwater manufacturing facilities that can produce weapons and supplies even on occupied worlds. Even the smaller species are contributing specialized technologies that no one knew they possessed. What the aliens had discovered during their darkest hour was something humans had always known they were capable of achieving. They had the intelligence, courage, and creativity needed to defend themselves. They simply had never been forced to develop these abilities because human protection had always been available. Lieutenant Nancy Cooper entered the observation post with intelligence reports from deep space monitoring stations. Sir, we are detecting massive Vrak fleet withdrawals across multiple sectors. It appears they are retreating toward their home territory. Morrison smiled for the first time in months. They never understood what they were really fighting against. The truth was more complex than any of the alien species realized. Humanity had never truly abandoned them, despite all appearances. While human diplomats, traders, and peacekeepers had withdrawn visibly from galactic affairs, human intelligence networks had remained active throughout the crisis. Every alien communication was still being monitored by human listening posts. Every Vrak strategy was analyzed by human military experts and quietly countered through carefully placed anonymous intelligence drops. The aliens fighting desperately for their survival never knew that their suddenly improved tactics came from human strategic analysis uploaded to their computer networks during the night. They never realized that their supply lines remained intact because human covert operations teams sabotaged Vrak logistics centers at crucial moments. They never suspected that their desperate last stand succeeded because human deep strike teams eliminated key Vrak commanders. Just before major battles, the alien species believed they were winning through their own strength and determination. In reality, humanity had been protecting them all along, just in ways they could not see or detect. Commander Lisa Hayes reviewed the final operational reports from the Covert Assistance Program. Operation Silent Guardian is complete, she announced to President Thompson during their secure video conference. All human assets have been withdrawn from alien territory without detection. Casualties? Thompson asked. Minimal. 12 agents were killed during sabotage operations, and one deep strike team was lost attacking a Vrak command center. The aliens never knew we were there. Thompson felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Human soldiers had died protecting species that had rejected their help, and those species would never know about their sacrifice. The Vrak Empire has retreated to their original borders, Hayes continued. Their military capacity has been reduced by approximately 70%. They will not be capable of launching another major offensive for at least a generation. And the Alien Alliance? They have formed a permanent defensive coalition called the Free Worlds Alliance. The organizational structure is designed to function without requiring outside mediation. They have learned to resolve disputes through direct negotiation and compromise. Thompson looked at reports showing alien refugee populations returning to rebuilt worlds. New cities were rising from the ashes of Vrak destruction. The species that had survived the crisis were working together in ways they never had before. They believe they won this war themselves, Thompson observed. Yes, Madam President, and in many ways they did. Our assistance was minimal compared to their own efforts. They developed new technologies, learned to cooperate across species lines, and found the courage to fight against overwhelming odds. 6 months later, a small alien diplomatic mission was granted permission to enter Sol Space. The delegation included representatives from all the major surviving species, but they came not as desperate refugees seeking help, but as equals requesting. Ambassador Kethfer looked much healthier than during his last communication. His crystalline features had regained their bright blue glow, and the stress cracks in his skin had healed. He stood before President Thompson in the same conference room where human withdrawal had been announced 3 years earlier. Madam President, we have come to express our gratitude and to offer our apologies, Kethver said formally. We understand now that our previous criticism of human methods was based on fear rather than wisdom. Thompson gestured for the delegation to be seated. Ambassador Kethver, you have nothing to apologize for. You were protecting your species? Right to self-determination. That is exactly what good leaders should do. But we were wrong about human intentions, the Altarian delegate insisted. You were never trying to control us or exploit our resources. You genuinely wanted to help us become stronger and more independent. The methods we disagreed with were not failures of human policy, added Admiral Zextai. They were necessary. Steps in teaching us to stand on our own. We simply were not ready to understand the lessons at that time. Thompson smiled. The galaxy survived its greatest crisis without human military intervention. Your species learned to work together, developed new technologies, and found the strength to defend yourselves. That was always our ultimate goal. We know now that you never truly abandoned us, Kethver said quietly. Our intelligence services have found evidence of covert assistance during the war. Anonymous intelligence reports that helped our military. Planning, supply depot explosions that crippled VRAC logistics, the sudden deaths of key enemy commanders at crucial moments. Thompson's expression remained neutral. I am not sure what you are referring to, Ambassador. Kethver smiled. Of course not, Madam President. But we want you to know that we understand. You gave us the greatest gift possible. You taught us that we could survive and thrive on our own, while making sure we had the chance to learn that lesson. As the diplomatic talks began, the galaxy entered a new era. The alien species had learned to stand together as equals rather than dependents. They had proven they could protect themselves and resolve their own conflicts, and humanity, having quietly ensured their survival while respecting their independence, finally achieved what they had always wanted, a galaxy of strong, self-sufficient species who could be true partners rather than grateful clients.